Hey, what's up? Let's check out some games today. On today's video, I'm going to talk about SD Hero Soukessen, Taose Aku no Gundan, or Soukessen for short. This game was published by Banpresto sometime in 1990. You might be familiar with Banpresto for one reason or another, but for now, let's just say they got a long way to go before they're the Banpresto that you know today. Before Soukessen, Banpresto seems to have been around quite a while longer under the name Hoei Sangyo Company, founded in April 1977. At some point, they seemed to begin making games under Sega's publishing and eventually would rename themselves to Corland sometime in 1982. Eventually, however, by 1989, they would come to be partly owned by Bandai, just in time for its first published game under the Banpresto name, SD Battle Ozumo Heisei Hero Basho in 1990. It probably won't merit its own episode, but I'll talk briefly on it anyway. Ozumo was simply a sumo game, but with an important twist that would shape Banpresto's identity. This game would feature properties from popular, albeit older franchises that were proving successful. Namely, properties such as Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Mobile Suit Gundam, even Super Sentai, and other characters that could arguably be described as cultural icons not just of their own generation, but surviving into today. Though the quality of the game itself is questionable at best, and at worst, possibly a rip-off of an existing game, that wasn't the strength that Banpresto was aiming for. Instead, they wanted to take advantage of the popularity of the franchises they were showcasing. And that leads us to their second game, Soukessen. Admittedly, the game wasn't directly developed by Banpresto itself, seeming to have been developed by a less successful company known as Interlink. Looking at its list of games, it doesn't seem to have lasted very long. But for now, let's just look at the game. So, Soukessen features 4 different franchises. There's Mobile Suit Gundam, Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and Metal Heroes properties. In case you were wondering, the Metal Heroes are a series of Toku heroes that include Spacer Gavan, Sherivan, Shider, and others. While admittedly they haven't had the longevity of the other series included in this game, there's no denying that it was a popular franchise for its time, and that explains its inclusion. So now let's get to the actual game. Once you start up, you see a little scene with a UFO showing up out of nowhere to abduct a little robot girl named Emmy and her little Gashapon friend. While alarming, I find the creepiest thing in this scene to be this tiny little moon up in space giving off this cold and unflinching stare. The big moon looks scared and sad when the two get abducted, but that tiny little moon is still smiling, and it's kind of creepy. But not all is lost when the Gashapon drops off 4 gacha balls from which the main heroes emerge and fly up in pursuit. At this point, you're presented with the stage select thing in the same fashion as the Mega Man games. There's really no getting around it. This game is basically a Mega Man clone, but it kinda lacks the whole upgrade power-up system of Mega Man, so whether or not that's a good or bad thing is completely up to you. So, you can choose any one of 8 stages, but the stages will always have you start out with a specific corresponding hero. I chose to go numerically ascending for simplicity's sake, so stage 1 is stage number 1. The kidnapped girl, Emmy, shows up in the left corner to remind you of why you're traveling the worlds to save the day. Whenever a stage starts, that stage's hero will have some unique animation as a way to fly to the stage from their home base, which, if you notice for a brief moment, has statues of the hero's allies as decorations. It's very brief, but it's a welcome attention to detail. The first stage, being a Kamen Rider stage, is filled with all sorts of villains from the Kamen Rider series. You'll probably notice the stage design has some inspiration from the series featured in the game. After defeating enemies, they'll randomly drop some items. Among these include a heart, which upgrades you into the next tier. And that leads me to the next point regarding how the character upgrades work. When you start a stage, you start out with one of the following characters: Kamen Rider 1, Ultraman, RX-78-2 Gundam, or Shider the Metal Heroes. When you get one of these hearts, you'll be upgraded to the next tier of Kamen Rider X, Ultra 7, Zeta Gundam, and Metalder respectively. Once you get another, you'll be upgraded into the final tier of Kamen Rider Black RX, Ultraman Taro, New Gundam, and Jiban, respectively. Each of these characters have their own strengths and weaknesses, but out of preference, I choose to play as the riders if I can help it. I just really like Kamen Rider Black RX, okay? So, keep in mind that there's no advantage to using any character that isn't in the final tier, so make it a priority to upgrade yourself to the final tier as soon as possible. When I talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the characters, I'll refer to them by their final tiers. The general idea is, New Gundam fires a projectile and has a funnel that fires directly above it in straight lines, which is good for taking out multiple or hard-to-reach targets. Jiban, similarly, fires 2 projectiles at once that go in the opposite diagonal directions in front of him. One shoots up and the other down, which means that you can take out more out-of-reach enemies at a distance, but it gets kinda awkward to fire at a close distance. Taro fires a projectile that is extremely powerful in front of him, and RX does a melee slash that does a lot of damage while also firing a projectile from his melee slash in a straight line. Occasionally, enemies will drop an item that swaps your hero with another hero from the same tier, characterized by a logo associated with their franchise. Other times, they'll drop a skull, which takes away your upgrades. Other items include the rice ball, which heals you, the Banpresto logo, which upgrades you and clears all the enemies on the screen, and an exclamation mark, which makes you invincible for a short period of time. Enemies, expectedly, are different and dangerous to varying degrees as well, ranging to those who will come up and smack you, swoop on you from above, and ranged attackers. The ones I find the most annoying, though, are those spinning guys who always seem to hit you again just as soon as you recover from the last hit. Stage 1 is pretty lenient on the absurd things that you can encounter in this game, and as such is a rather easy stage to beat with nothing too tricky getting in your way. The boss of this stage, Shadow Moon from Kamen Rider Black RX, is a big boy with 2 swords and also very choreographed attacks that are easy to dodge. Unless you're me, of course. Something I find kinda cute about this game is that when your heroes jump, they jump like 500 feet into the air for some reason, and then they let out a little battle cry above their head when they do. They also kinda have a little battle cry when they get hit, but that's... obviously you don't want to get hit. But oh my god, try not to get a game over, because when you do, you're greeted to like this really bizarre and creepy screen depicting Emmy being chained to like a horseshoe thing. I'm not really sure what it is.
Oh my god!
Still, try not to get a game over. Anyway, the second stage is a Gundam Stage. One thing that really bothers me about the game, that this stage really makes obvious to me, is that there's enemies that'll literally appear out of nowhere on a certain part of the screen. As a mercy, spikes don't kill you instantly in this game, but they still do a bit of damage, and there's a lot of pitfalls that you can get thrown into sometimes. Additionally, there's particular enemies you can not only jump off of, but get a huge leap from doing so without taking damage. The boss of this stage is Alpha Aziru, who has their own funnels firing as they move. The general strategy is to jump on the platform in the arena and duck and jump accordingly to the boss's movements. It's an extremely hard target to miss, especially thanks to your funnels if you're playing as new. The third stage is an Ultraman Stage, and it's a little more cramped than the previous two. The fact that it's a tight fit can be a bit annoying, and there's a variant of those enemies you can jump on but also swoop down on you, but generally it's pretty manageable. The boss of this stage, Zeton, likewise, is a bit annoying but not a significant threat. It'll shoot 2 projectiles your way before warping out to a random location and doing it again. The fourth stage is a Metal Hero stage, which has some fidgety little enemies as well as some treadmill-like platforms which can really ruin your day. In addition, there's these guys who split apart after you hit them once or twice and become a lot more dangerous if you don't deal with them quick. The boss of this stage, I believe, is called Mado Garbo and is a villain from Jiban. There's spikes in the roof of the arena, making it a little dangerous to jump over the boss as it does its thing, while the floor is composed of the treadmill platforms. Its pattern is to fire 2 projectiles, then dash across the screen, making this boss fight one of the more irritating, if not difficult, ones to deal with. Generally, what I did was just stay at the center so the floor wouldn't move me around, and then just hit it with ranged attacks, and I was fine. Stage 5 is another Kamen Rider stage, but it's more or less the same as the third stage. Crammed, filled with spikes, and those same enemies that drop down on you. This time there's more ranged and fidgety enemies, but other than that, this stage is pretty much straightforward. The boss of this stage is King Dark from Kamen Rider X, who I would say is probably the simplest, maybe even the easiest boss in the game. He doesn't move, and he just fires 4 projectiles in rapid succession in your direction. Just hit him a bunch of times with ranged attacks and then jump to avoid getting hit and he'll explode. Funny enough, when you beat him, the scientist who actually operates King Dark behind the scenes in Kamen Rider X, spoilers for that 70s TV show if you haven't seen it, shows up as a tiny sprite while running around in a panic. Though the implications of this are that the SD heroes are actually like really huge in comparison to normal humans, but I don't know, it's kind of funny. Now, Stage 6 is another Gundam stage, but it's got this interesting gimmick going for it. Right at the start of the stage, there's a little split that lets you pick different routes to walk through the stage, and you can even see what the other split looks like, so you can despair when you realize that you picked the wrong path. By this point, you've basically seen everything the game can throw at you, so you just keep going until you hit invisible platforms? I'm not sure why they have invisible platforms. They don't really do anything besides be invisible, but okay. The boss of the stage is the Zeong from the Gundam series, and dear God, it's the hardest boss in the game. Right off the bat, it fires its 2 fists to fire projectiles at you from either side, and you have to destroy its main body before it detaches its head for the real fight to begin. The head starts moving around with the arms, because of course it does, and then it starts firing projectiles. And so, basically, you have to pray that you have a hero who can shoot multiple targets, preferably Jiban, and then just spray and dodge. It's way easier said than done, but what can you do? Stage 7, another Ultraman stage, is fairly straightforward with some invisible blocks here and there, and for some reason spikes that don't seem to hurt you at all. I like the aesthetic of the stage, and the creepy castle-like setting kind of reminds me of the Castlevania franchise, which is dear to my heart. The boss of this stage is the Tyrant from Ultraman Taro. It fires its axe hand that goes back and forth before shooting a projectile that goes in your direction. As soon as its axe returns, the Tyrant dashes back and forth across the stage, and there's no deviation from this, so the fight essentially becomes a test of jump timing. Stage 8, the second Metal Hero stage, is very similar to Stage 3 and 5, a downward descent in a more or less confined space. Like the stages before, there were uniquely designed enemies, but they're effectively reskins of enemies you've already found. Some will throw you off guard, like this one guy who teleports and fires projectiles at you, but you can just as easily not fight it. The boss of this stage is Great Emperor Kublai, the main antagonist of Space Sheriff Scheider. It'll fire 2 rapid projectiles in your direction before hopping madly to the other side of the arena. In theory, all you have to do is jump around and move a little to dodge, but I found it to be the second most difficult boss at this point, but there is a really big power gap between this and the Zeong. Once all 8 stages are beaten, the final stage will make itself available. It's the final assault on the mysterious bad guy's base, and you can choose whoever you want to start with in this stage. The music for this stage is exceptionally nice and builds up that hype that you expect for a final stage. There's all kinds of new bad guys you haven't seen before, and on that note, I'd like to point out that this game acknowledges that Kamen Rider Z-Cross existed by having Tigeroid, an enemy from the series, as an enemy in this last stage. At least I hope and think it's oh god, what if it's not? Anyway, Z-Cross deserves more love, okay? On top of that, this game basically throws everything it's shown so far at you, so don't feel bad if it takes a few tries to get this stage down. It's probably not as insanely hard as other games of its genre, but you should by no means underestimate it. A neat little detail towards the end of the stage shows that the UFO that kidnapped Emmy was just one of several. The boss of this stage is the main antagonist, some ugly dude named Dark Brain? He jumps across the screen as he fires 3 projectiles that follow you. It's a little intimidating, but basically you gotta cut and run. Once you get the run part down, it gets easier to hit the boss. But wait, there's so much more to this fight. So like, once you beat Dark Brain, Emmy shows up walking towards you, and yeah, you think like, yeah, you saved the day, right? But then, oh god, what the hell is that? Seriously, it looks like something out of a Resident Evil game. She like transformed into this deformed, angry fusion of Dark Brain and herself, and then that's the actual final boss. She fires a projectile that, if it connects, will knock you to the other side of the arena as she hops up, dashes across the screen, and carpet bombs parts of the arena. It's actually kind of scary. It really threw me off the first time. But once you find a spot where the carpet bomb won't hit, all you have to do is just kind of like stand still and only jump when she fires a projectile. Hit her hard enough times and she'll turn back into that cute little robot girl from before. Once that happens, you flee Dark Brain's castle as it explodes, and the threat of Dark Brain is seemingly gone for good. Yeah, fucking right. You're last seen cheering with Emmy as you walk off on a field before the gadget toy machine shows up on the field and does a little dance. And then the credits roll with the heroes flying off into space with Emmy. So, what are my thoughts on the game? I think it's actually pretty fun, and easy enough to play a couple of times. The sprites are varied enough by stage, and each stage is relatively unique looking in their own right, though I could have hoped for a little more variety in the actual gameplay design of the levels. But the appearance serves to really add to this whole little cutesy SD setting the whole game takes place in. The music is enjoyable, especially the final stage theme, which I enjoyed the most. Additionally, I found that this game, for a Famicom game, controls a lot better than many other games of its time, so that's nice at least. There isn't much to say as far as the game's plot, but that's sort of to be expected given the time period. The gameplay itself is pretty solid, and the characters are very easy to control, which I like. And I like the ability to change characters across the series, though I wish it wouldn't occur randomly based on drops. However, there does seem to be a kind of cheat you can enter into the game which lets you toggle characters you're playing as, but I never really did that. Playing it for the first time could catch you off guard, but as you learn and improve, the game becomes pretty fun. At the end of the day, I say, yeah, go ahead and try it. If you like it enough, it's not too long, you'll get a feel for what to expect pretty early on, too. One gripe I do have with this game, though. Like, oh my god, this one's kind of bad. So, the front cover of the game features New Gundam fighting the Sazabi, and that's like the main focus of the cover. But once you play the game, the Sazabi isn't actually in the game at all. I don't really know what the explanation for that is, but it's just not there, even though it's on the cover. So, yeah, I guess. But that doesn't really affect how much I enjoy this game, so yeah. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and check out some games with me. Later, guys.